Welcome in, Evan.
My dog is just pulling this shit out of me. What's up, dude?
Not too much. Evan, are you at least 18 and are you a believer?
Yeah, I am a Christian. Actually, I used to be a Jew. Before that, I was a secular kind of humanist. I think kind of like you are.
Sure. And what would be the most convincing argument or evidence for the Christian God being real?
So I would say the historical evidence of the New Testament is the best thing that we have. I mean, you have over 400 witnesses. You have non-Christian. I mean, between Mark, Luke, John,
Mark wasn't a witness.
Paul,
Mark was not a witness.
Okay, Mark is written. Sorry,
yeah,
written
Mark
by
is
a bunch of witnesses. It's written
Mark
in the
is
first
the cousin
century,
of Barnabas.
It was written in the first century.
So Mark didn't witness anything, right?
Who were close to. Can I finish talking, or are you going to talk over every guess you have?
So I don't talk over every guess. What I do is,
but you're not even letting me finish making a point.
When you make a point, sometimes I'm responding to the point rather than letting you yap about it. So Mark wasn't an eyewitness to anything. Mark was the cousin of Barnabas.
By being rude.
So Mark was the cousin of Barnabas. He wasn't an eyewitness. Do we agree on that?
Sure, but when did he live?
Supposedly, he lived roughly the same time as Paul.
Okay, and Paul saw Jesus after the death, according to him, right?
According to him, I don't think he did. I think he had a near-death experience. I don't personally believe that the narrative we're getting in the book of Acts about Paul is legitimate. Okay, but we're not talking about your personal beliefs.
We're talking about historical evidence,
in Acts 22, it says that he received letters from the Sanhedrin to track down these Christians. And I've read the writings of the Sanhedrin. Okay, I don't see anything in the Sanhedrin about giving
Paul a real person?
About giving anyone papers to go and track down the Christians.
During the time of Jesus, yes or no?
Oh, I have no idea if he was a real person. I'm inclined to believe that he probably...
his letters? Do most historians agree that Paul is a real person who existed during the time of Jesus?
I'm inclined to believe that Paul was a real person. I don't have definitive proof that he was a real person. I am willing to grant that he was a real person. What I don't grant is that the mythology written about him in the New Testament is true. For the same reason that I don't feel like the mythology about Jesus in the New Testament is true.
Dude,
so the fact that Paul existed and had a near-death experience to me,
somebody talk and have a debate with you, or you just
isn't actually all that meaningful to me. So I'm not questioning whether or not Paul existed. I'm questioning whether or not Jesus is God.
Oh. Okay, but we can have that discussion, but you're not even giving me the grant of, like, did Paul exist at the time of Jesus?
I already granted you that he was probably a real person. No, he wasn't a witness.
Okay, but could he be a credible person for what he said happened, and then what he did after that, where he threw away his whole life, right? He was a high priest.
Yeah, he did. Well, he wasn't a high priest.
Well, he was a part of the high Jewish order. He was basically Jewish royalty.
No, he said he was a Pharisee.
He was persecuting Christians.
He said he was a Pharisee. Yeah, and again, I already told you, I don't believe that he was going and necessarily rounding up Christians under the order of the Sanhedrin. And the reason why I don't believe that is because I've actually read the writings of the Sanhedrin. I don't find any evidence in there that they were commissioning people to go round up Christians. That seems to be something that was happening many, many years later on behalf of the Romans, not the Jews.
So you wouldn't think the people following the Christians, so do you think that Jesus was a real person?
I think he was a real person, but I think the writings about him are largely mythologized, just like I believe there are other figures that are real. So I believe that Sennacherib was a real king. I believe that Ashurbanipal was a real king. I don't believe the mythology that is written about those particular individuals. Somebody existing in real life doesn't mean that the mythology written about them...
Can you stop going on like huge tangents, dude?
The fact that somebody exists in history doesn't mean that you need to accept
Okay, but I'm not contending that. You're starting to go on...
The fact that somebody exists in history doesn't mean that the mythology about that person is true. For the same reason that you probably believe that Ramses existed, but you don't believe that Ramses was a demigod. Unfortunately, the Egyptians believed that he was a demigod. Do you see the difference?
The Egyptians.
Why are you shouting?
Why are you yapping?
It sounds
You're
to me like
you'd have a debate.
It sounds to me like you're not actually capable of having a conversation, and it certainly sounds
no, you're not because you don't
like
even let the second person
you're not full
talk,
of the Holy Spirit. Because it sounds to me the Holy Spirit says
the Egyptians. See, if I just keep
you actually can't talk over me. I have the mute button. So the fruit of the Holy Spirit is joy, peace, patience, kindness, generosity, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. I didn't see any of that. Colossians 3:8 says, you must get rid of all such things: anger, wrath, malice, slander, and abusive language from your mouth. I'm not seeing from you like
your argument.
I'm not seeing from you anything that would, warrant an idea that you're actually a real Christian filled with the Holy Spirit that came here
I asked you one simple question
to actually debate
and you go on a 5-minute
topic. It wasn't a 5-minute filibuster. I was explaining to you why the existence of a human being doesn't prove that the mythology about the human being is real.
But I wasn't making that argument that the existence of a human being means anything. I was just asking you one question. Do you acknowledge his existence, yes or no? You don't have to go on a 3-minute answer.
I've already granted that I believe Jesus was probably a real person. I don't believe that the mythology written about him is true.
Well, obviously you don't believe that, but you're asking me what my best, and I'm not trying to convince you. I'm just more talking to your audience that this is.
Well, you're definitely not going to convince my audience.
Okay, but that's great. I'm not going to get to you either because you're not open to even having your mind changed to anything.
No, I am open to changing my mind. That's how I became an atheist. I used to be a Christian, except when I was a Christian, I was a better example of a Christian than you. I became an atheist because my mind was open. See, I didn't have a life of an atheist. I had a life of a Christian. And then when I was presented with actual evidence, I became a non-Christian, and then eventually I became an atheist. So listen, if you can present some evidence that would legitimately prove that Jesus is the Messiah and that the Bible is true, I'd be more than willing to admit that the Bible is true.
As much as you can prove the Big Bang Theory.
Well, the Big Bang has nothing to do with whether or not the Bible is true. So that's a completely irrelevant topic. I could care less if the Big Bang actually happened.
You're so bad at having a two-way discussion. It's ridiculous. Like
it's so crazy that you crash out every time I say something. It's almost like you're terrified to let me.
Rude and disrespectful.
It's almost like you're terrified to let me speak on my own live stream.
At least let the ideas be presented of the other side if you want to have a real debate.
You aren't presenting anything. What you're doing is you're asking questions, and when then
you're filibustering.
When I answer questions, you crash out because you're a child.
What's the longest you've had?
It's okay if you're not capable of engaging in adult dialogue.
What's the longest? What's the longest time you've had?
It's okay that your mother actually didn't teach you how to have a conversation.
Now my mother.
Yeah, she'd be embarrassed if she was watching this particular conversation.
You're really great.
You're embarrassing your entire lineage right now. I would tell her to stay off the internet. That's because this is going to be. This is going to be posted.
Isn't even capable of.
This is going to be posted on YouTube for all of eternity. All right, let's see if we can get this conversation back on track. I'm still waiting for the evidence that the Christian God is real. Do you have any?
Yes.
Cool. What is it?
Okay, so the Christian evidence would be that there were over 400 witnesses that saw the resurrection. Can I make a point or no?
I mean, I'm going to tell you the same thing.
Can I go and present my evidence?
So I'll help you out. Okay. So whether you say there are 400 witnesses now and then say 10 other things, or you say there are 400 witnesses and end there, I'm going to have the same exact response. No matter what comes out of your mouth after you mention 400 witnesses, none of it, nothing that comes out of your mouth will ever change my response to the fact that there were 400 witnesses. And the reason why nothing is ever going to change my response of the 400 witnesses is because you're making a claim about what is written in 1 Corinthians 15 that is not true and you haven't read.
Okay, but if you ask historians, many historians agree that that number is an accurate number of the amount of witnesses. Yes, they do, dude.
No, they don't.
Yes, they do. There are plenty of theologians. Look it up on ChatGPT right now.
Name one.
Look it up on ChatGPT right now. Look at it. You don't care what I have to say.
Name a single scholar.
What, name a scholar?
Yeah.
I don't know a scholar off the top of my head that says
then
that.
How do you know what they believe?
Why would I memorize the scholar's
How do you know what scholars believe if you can't even name one?
Okay, name me a scholar that disagrees with it.
I would say pretty much all the New Testament scholars that I know of. I would say James Dunn. I would say Bart Ehrman. I would say probably David De Silva.
Where James Dunn disagrees with it.
Oh, I never said that I knew exactly in which book he would disagree with it. What I'm saying is that there are New Testament scholars that agree. First of all, they would agree that you're wrong, right? It doesn't say 400 witnesses, but they agree with me that the 400 witnesses, actually 500 witnesses, aren't named. We have no evidence that 500 people saw the resurrected Jesus. The only people that are named are the disciples and some of the women.
Okay. And why would you use a woman as a credible witness in the first century?
Why wouldn't you?
Because women wouldn't be credible witnesses in a story about trying to confirm the resurrection. Yeah, 100%. In the first century, you would use a woman as a credible witness?
Well, first of all, the women weren't. The story wasn't dependent on the women, and second of all, yes, women could be witnesses.
It was dependent on the women. The women were the first ones to see the empty grave.
It wasn't dependent on them. The disciples went to the grave after them.
Okay, but why would you have the first people be women? If you wanted to make a story, make up a mythos to convince people, why would you say, oh, the first people that saw Jesus, that he was missing from his grave, were women?
Because women are the first people who do visit the graves. In real life, when somebody dies, women go to the grave before the men because they have to spice the body. So the way the customs work is that the women were in charge of spicing and wrapping and caring for the dead body, and the men were not. So women were the ones that were going to be going to the tomb to spice the body, not men. That's why women were at the tomb first.
Sure. I still don't think first century people would use women as a credible witness.
They did.
If you wanted to say, hey, the resurrection happened. And what other story does that happen?
I'm not talking about stories. I'm talking about in real life. You can just read about Roman life. Women in the Roman
narrative, where do they use women in the first?
Women in the Roman women in the Roman government were not seen the way they are in in the Quran. Like women were not like
the Quran wasn't around
less than
the Quran wasn't written until 600 AD.
I never said it. I never said it was. Pay attention,
We're
child.
Talking about first century.
What I'm saying is that the idea of women being witnesses in the nation of Rome, in the capital, has nothing. It's not comparable the way that they're treated in the Quran. In the Quran, two women are equal to one.
Why are we talking about the Quran, dude?
Crazy that you can't let me finish a statement. So in the Quran, women are treated as two of them needed to be equal to the value of one man. What you're suggesting is that in ancient Rome, we have a similar idea that women weren't credible witnesses. We don't have anything from ancient Rome that would demonstrate that women couldn't serve as witnesses.
Do we have anything from ancient Rome that shows that women are used as credible witnesses?
Yeah, we have a shit ton of legal documents and historical documents from ancient Rome demonstrating that legal cases were performed with both male and female witnesses.
Okay, and what correlation does that have to do with a religious text talking about?
You brought it up, not me.
That came. Okay, but you're like arguing and making an argument that I'm not making, dude.
No, the argument you're making is that women weren't good witnesses. These aren't even. People didn't believe that women could be witnesses. Therefore, it doesn't make sense that women were in fact witnesses to the dead Jesus and the resurrection, when in fact it was both women and male witnesses. And the women came first because they had to spice the bodies prior to the men getting there. That's all it is.
Sure. But if it's a mythos, right? If it's made up, then cool, they accounted for that. Do you know what? If we're going to make up the story that we're all going to die for right now, let's make sure the first witnesses are women, because that's who spices the bodies.
But the testimony doesn't depend on the women. The testimony depends not on the women. It depends on the entire group claiming to have seen what was witnessed. Sure. The women just happened to be the first people there. That's it.
Sure, but it doesn't. But usually women wouldn't be who you'd want to use as your first credible witnesses.
It doesn't matter. If you're making up a story, you need the women to be there before you. You need the women to be there to spice the body, because they
could have saw Jesus later.
Because in real life, women would have been there. Dead bodies were spiced. Dead bodies were wrapped and cared for. This was something that women did. It wouldn't be out of place to write a narrative about a dead body that was spiced by a group of women.
Okay, so how do you explain the connection of Psalm 22 and the crucifixion of Christ?
There's no connection. Psalm 22 doesn't mention crucifixion whatsoever.
Okay, so read it.
Sure. What part? 16 and 17?
No, read it from the beginning. First off, what were the last words that Jesus said on the cross?
Well, it depends on which gospel you read. One gospel says, "Into your hands I commend my spirit," and one says, my God, why have you forsaken me?"
Okay,
and there's another one that reads a little bit different. Okay, Psalm 22 starts out. Psalm 22 starts out declaring that it's a psalm that was written by King David. Okay, it's not a prophecy; it's a psalm. Theoretically, well, if David wrote it, then it was written during his lifetime. So about 1000 BCE is roughly when King David lived. And it starts out, my God, why have you forsaken me? Why are you so far from helping me? From my words, or from the words of my groaning, so on and so forth. So we all know Psalm 22.
No, read the whole psalm, please. If it has nothing to do with the crucifixion,
none of it is prophetic.
Okay, read the whole thing then.
The part that you want me to read starts in verse 16. You want me to read the part that you like?
Sure, read the whole thing, or read whatever.
For dogs are all around me. A company of evildoers encircle me. They bound my hands and my feet. I can count all my bones. They stare and they gloat over me. They divide my clothes among themselves, and for my clothing they cast lots. But you, O Lord, do not be far from me.
Were the Roman soldiers gambling over, according to the gospel, were the Roman soldiers gambling for his clothes?
According to the narrative, and that's what happened when somebody was. That's what happens. That's what happens when people were captured in war. So Psalm 22 isn't a prophecy just because something that David describes.
Read the rest of it.
Psalm 22 doesn't become prophetic just because something that David described.
Why do you not want to read the rest of it?
I'm trying to make a statement. Why are you afraid of me talking? Why are you terrified of me talking? Why are you so scared of me explaining why I don't believe that Psalm 22 is a prophecy? That you're terrified. You're interrupting. You can't handle it. So I'll just mute you. So just because something in a psalm sounds similar to something that happens to somebody else later doesn't make it a prophecy. In fact, Psalm 22 has nothing to do with Jesus. This is about King David. In fact, when King David was on the run, it even says that he was going up the mountain barefoot. This idea that King David is likening his own suffering to somebody fallen in battle is not unique, and it certainly isn't a prophecy. A prophecy is an actual form of speech where somebody has to say, this is what's going to happen. God is giving you an utterance, and the utterance says that this is the information being revealed. A prophecy is not, well, King David wrote about something and it sounds similar to something else. That doesn't make it a prophecy.
Okay, can you finish reading it then?
Nothing in verses 19 to the end. Why are you so afraid
to read it?
Because none of it's relevant to what you want.
Okay, I'll read it for you since you're so afraid to read it for your viewers.
Go ahead and get me to the part in verse 19 to the end where it talks about Jesus.
I will. Let me open it up.
This is going to be a painful experience for you.
Oh, man, it's so painful. You're just owning me so hard, dude.
You're owning yourself is what's happening.
Yeah, I know. I feel so embarrassed.
You should be embarrassed. I'd be embarrassed if I were you.
The last words that Jesus said on the cross just happened to be the opening of a psalm that many... Okay, you can't...
That doesn't make it a prophecy.
Why are you so controlled by Satan that you can't let me finish one thought?
I'm not controlled by Satan. What I'm saying is
you are because you're so
the point that you're about to give, we've all heard 4,000 times. The fact that Jesus quoted, they know the Bible better than you do. So the fact that Jesus quoted verse 1 doesn't make it a prophecy.
But it's thousands of years in between, and so I guess that just happens to be a coincidence for you.
It's not a coincidence. Why do you think that somebody reading the book? Why do you think that somebody? Why do you think that somebody reading the book is unable to quote it? The question isn't whether or not Jesus could quote a line from a psalm. Quoting a line from a psalm does not make the psalm a prophecy. Do you even understand?
That King David said.
Do you even understand the problem? Do you understand that quoting from a psalm isn't magical?
Do you understand that the last words of just to you, a mere human, who's been nailed to a cross after been hit with a nine tails over 700 times. And
show me that in the Bible. Show me where he was. Show me where he's hit 700 times.
As the king of the Jews.
You keep making stuff up.
Right,
show me where he.
Good time.
Show me where he was struck 700 times. Show me.
Right now is the best time for me to just quote. Can I finish reading Psalm 22, or are you so afraid to let your viewers hear it?
I asked you to show me the part in Psalm 22. I asked you.
Coming to Jesus.
You're not converting. That? You're not converting a single person here tonight.
Okay,
I asked you to show me in Psalm 22 where there's anything a prediction for the future.
Okay, can I read it?
I've literally asked you to do it and you didn't do it. Go ahead and read it.
Okay, so let me read it then. Now that we're done arguing.
We're definitely not done arguing.
Here we go. So I'm going to start from 11. But to me, it's interesting that
you wanted to read all of it. Read all of it.
Can I talk, dude?
No, you wanted to read all of it. I'm going to make you read all of it. This was your request, not mine.
Okay, I'm going to read all of it. But
read every last word.
My point of view. Also, while I'm reading it, is that okay if I can make comments during it? Is that okay with you?
You're more than welcome to make comments if you need to.
Okay. Will you at least mute your microphone so I can get through the whole thing instead of interjecting and stopping this from happening?
I certainly will not mute my microphone.
Okay. Will you be quiet till I finish?
Well, I'll certainly be quiet to let you cook yourself. Go ahead.
Okay. Let me cook myself. So, my God, why hast thou forsaken me? So to me, it's interesting that this was written in 1500 AD, about 1300 AD during King David, and this is the last thing that Jesus BCE. Said. Yeah, 1100. Thank you. You're right.
You said 1500 AD. That's 500 years BC, ago.
My bad. I you're right. Sorry, I'm a little amped up. You get me amped up, dude.
I think you get yourself amped up.
Yeah, I know, but this is like kind of exciting for
Maybe
me.
You should have the power of the Holy Spirit and not get amped up like this.
It's hard, dude. It's really hard.
What's hard about it?
I mean, it's still an emotional thing, right? If someone's like interrupting you while you're trying to make a thought, I guess it's kind of easy to get amped up, you know?
But you're the one interrupting. You're the one that can't have a conversation.
No, but you've been going on like this. Why you... Come on, dude. Let's just do this thing. Why are you trying to go on a tangent again?
Go ahead. I'm listening.
Okay. So around 1100 BC, before Christ, or what's the actual BC stand for?
Before Common Era.
Before Common Era. My God, why hast thou forsaken me? Again, I find this interesting because this is the beginning of a psalm written 1100 BC-ish that is the last line that some people say is just a mortal man hanging on a cross after getting beaten mercilessly to the point of non-recognition. And he decides that he's going to say a psalm, which also kind of paints the picture of the coming of him. And people argue that the Old Testament kind of points to Jesus, the coming of Jesus a lot, and the New Testament is the fulfillment of that. So you find a lot of parallels between his life and that.
Not a single thing in the Old Testament predicted Jesus.
I mean, that's just your opinion, dude. But
no, it's true.
Okay. So why art thou so far from helping me, and from the words of my roaring? Oh my God, I cry in the daytime, but thou hearest not, and in the night season, and am not silent. But thou art holy, O thou that inhabitest the praises of Israel. Our fathers trusted in thee. They trusted, and thou didst deliver them. They cried unto thee, and were delivered. Also, it's pointed out that Jesus is the son of King David by bloodline, right?
He wasn't, though.
When you read the New Testament...
He wasn't descended from King David.
Yeah, because you're going to say Joseph's not, but through Nathan...
Yeah, Joseph... Joseph isn't the father of Jesus.
Scholars agree through Nathan.
Joseph wasn't the father of Jesus.
Okay. And...
you said by blood. So... He's obviously not the descendant of King David by blood. If Joseph, it's not a theological argument. It's just logically true. If your father is descendant from King David, but he adopted you, then you're not by blood of the lineage of David.
Okay, cool. Anyway, so some scholars say that through Nathan he is, and some people say that Joseph was still his father. Regardless, that's why the lineage is there in the beginning of the New Testament. So they trusted and thou hast delivered them. They cried unto thee and were delivered. They trusted in thee and were not confounded. But I am a worm and no man, a reproach of men and despised of the people. And they see me and they laugh me to scorn. And some people say this is drawing the Roman soldiers were laughing at him. And there's also another part later that says in the next few lines, because there was a sign on the cross that said, Jesus of Nazareth, King of the Jews, as mockery, right?
Cool story, because though, but this is about King David. This is not a prophecy.
Okay, but I'm saying that in these lines, this is what people say point to Jesus.
But it doesn't. Okay. It points to King David. King David wrote it in the first person about
interpret it as that. Can I finish reading?
It's not my opinion. It literally says, to the leader, according to the deer of the dawn, a psalm of King David. So King David is writing, saying, my God, my God. So all I have to go on are like grammatical cues, right? When the grammar says that, my God, why are you forsaking me? And I know that the person writing is King David. I know that the person writing wrote a bunch of psalms very similar to this. I have no reason to believe that is anything but a psalm of lament of King David, just like his other psalms of lament.
But isn't King David isn't this written by the Holy Spirit through him?
No.
Okay, but that's your opinion. Some people would say it is.
Well, shit, that's your opinion. I don't care.
That's our argument.
I'm not a believer. You have to demonstrate that to be the case. So you would have to find a reason other than magic to convert this to a prophecy. You don't have one. All you have is magic.
I'm sorry that you don't have God in your life. You've chosen not to.
Well, I'm sorry that you don't have logic in your life, that you've chosen irrationality and magic. I haven't done it.
This is perfectly logical.
So your whole argument is Psalm 22 sounds like Jesus, therefore it's a prophecy. And just because something sounds like something else doesn't make it a prophecy. That's the sharpshooter fallacy.
Okay, I love it. I love the sharpshooter fallacy.
I don't think you do love it.
Around my bullets right now. So let me finish, please. For your audience. So
my audience would cook you just as fast as I do.
That he would deliver them. That's what happens. That's the narrative.
Did Jesus trust that he would be delivered from the cross?
If you're crying out to your God, why isn't he taking you off the cross?
Did Jesus trust that he would be delivered from the cross?
Huh?
Go ahead. I'm listening.
So that's what the Romans are saying, that he trusted on the Lord that he would deliver him. Let him deliver him, seeing he delighted in him. But thou art that he took me out of the womb.
But Jesus and his lack of deliverance is different than what Psalm 22 is saying.
No, he trusted in the Lord that would deliver him. Let him deliver him. That's what the Romans said.
I know.
You don't see the parallel?
But David is looking for a real deliverance, and Jesus was not. Jesus wasn't looking to be delivered from the cross. He was looking to be delivered in real life.
Okay.
There's no parallel.
There's no parallel.
And again, even if there was a parallel, it's completely meaningless.
It's just completely random.
Just because something that happened to David sounds similar to something that happened to Jesus does not make it a prophecy. This type of nonsense happened all the time in the ancient Near East. People were captured. They were mocked. They were made fun of. Their clothes were stolen by their captors, so on and so forth. This is not unique.
Okay. But it's not interesting that a mortal man, according to you, on the cross, reported by an apostle who was there, points to Psalm 22, which has eerily similar links.
It's meaningless to me because Jesus knew the Psalms. If he was a Jewish teacher,
but why would he start with that line while he's like, dude?
If Jesus was a Jewish teacher, he would know the Psalms, and as he's struggling on the cross, obviously he would quote one of the most well-known passages of poetry from all of the Hebrew Bible, which would be the Psalms of David. The Psalms of Lament were the most well-known parts of the Hebrew Bible other than the Torah for the first century Jews. So yeah, I'm not surprised at all that as Jesus was on the cross, he said, my God, why have you forsaken me? Also, fun fact, we don't have any evidence that he actually said, those words. Again, you just have to trust that the New Testament is telling you true things, and I don't trust it. But even if he did say those words, I have no reason to believe that he meant that Psalm 22 is a prophecy. And even if he did believe that Psalm 22 is a prophecy, you can't demonstrate that it actually is a prophecy. You're starting at the destination and you're doing the sharpshooter fallacy. You're saying it is a prophecy because Jesus said it's a prophecy, but you have to start at the beginning. You have to demonstrate first that it's a prophecy.
1,200 years later, just a coincidence.
It's not a coincidence. I can quote the text from the Bible too, and I'm 2005. I'm 2005. The cross has nothing to do with Psalm 22. There's nothing about crucifixion here.
They pierced my hands and my feet?
That's not there.
What?
What's the Hebrew word for pierce?
Where is it?
You won't find it because it's not in the passage.
Oh, you know Hebrew now?
Yes.
Oh, talk to me in Hebrew, please.
The Hebrew word is dakar. That means pierce.
Okay, and what's the Hebrew word there?
The Hebrew word there isn't a real Hebrew word. The Hebrew word that you have, you nailed it. The Hebrew word that is in the text is a mistake. It's a copyist error, which is why every translation of the text has something different. That's why in the Jewish translation, it'll say like a lion, because that's what's in most of the Masoretic text. It says like a lion, ka'ari. Some texts, like in the Dead Sea Scrolls, it says ka'aru. The problem is that ka'aru is not actually a real word in Hebrew.
Okay, can you pull it up?
Pull what up? What do you want to see?
Pull up the Hebrew Psalm 22, the original Psalm 22, and let's look at it.
Yeah, I'll show it to you. Hold on.
What line is that? Where is it? Where my hands are? Where's the hands and feet? Okay, that's going to be line 17. Psalm 22:17.
Okay. Can you see the screen or no?
Here, let me go over to your screen. Okay. Where are you? Okay.
So in the Masoretic text, it says ka'ari, which means like a lion. It does not mean they pierced.
Okay,
it's not even third person.
Original text, though.
There is no original text. That's why I'm telling you. We have no original text
of Psalm 22. We don't have any Hebrew or Greek.
The oldest text we have is from the Nehal Hever scroll system, which is from the Judean desert. And it doesn't say ka'ari, it says ka'aru, and ka'aru isn't an actual word. It's a misspelling. It's a misspelling of a word, and nobody knows what the actual word is supposed to be.
Isn't it that the Jews claim that every copy of the Old Testament has to be written exactly from a previous one?
No, that's not real.
That's what I've been told.
That's mythology. You've been lied to.
Okay, so
where'd he go? We lost him. He yapped so much he got raptured. We'll see if he comes back. We'll give him a minute. I don't see him on the screen. Hold on, where'd he go? Did he drop out? No. All right, we'll give him a minute. He'll come back. He'll come back. We'll give him a second. We'll give him a second to see if he comes back. I don't see him coming back. I don't know what happened to him. I think his equipment died, but here's the scroll from the Nehal Hever collection. And what you'll discover is that there is a misspelled Hebrew word. Ka'aru, yadi, is not spelled correctly. Ka'aru is misspelled. It's possibly the word kara misspelled, which means like they dug or they burrowed. Typically, it is never referred to as pierced. This is misspelled as well. This H or hey at the end of it doesn't actually exist in the proper spelling of the word. So we got 2 words in a row that are misspelled. And so nobody knows what is in the original text, which is why all of the text that we do have of this particular, hold on, why is my browser not showing what I want to show? Of this particular script, let me get rid of this, get rid of this, get rid of this. There we go. All the texts we have of this have something different in it. Some of them say ka'ari, some of them say ka'aru, some of them say ka'aru with an ayin rather than an aleph. Every manuscript we have of Psalm 22 has something different because everyone's trying to guess what was in the original text, since the oldest text we have is corrupt. It's not actually in there. Okay. Well, listen, I don't think he's actually coming back. And it's 10:10, and he's a belligerent prick anyways. So I'm going to read a couple super chats, and then I think it's probably time to hit the road.